April 1945. A muddy prisoner compound somewhere near the Rhine. Lines of German women stood, trembling in the cold morning air. Their coats were fastened tightly against the wind. Their fingers were stiff and numb. Their hearts beat hard in their chests. They had lived through bombs raining from the sky. They had fled cities consumed by fire. They had endured capture by enemy troops. And now an American officer moved slowly along the line. He stopped. He studied them. Then he spoke an order that sent a chill through everybody standing there. Open your coat. Just 3 words. Nothing more. Some women went rigid. Others clutched their coats instinctively, as if the fabric itself could protect them. One young woman felt her legs give way and thought she might fall straight into the mud beneath her boots. They understood what this was supposed to mean. They had been warned about this moment for years. Posters, radio broadcasts, whispered stories passed from mouth to mouth. All of them pointed to this exact fear. This was the moment they had been taught to dread above all others. But something strange happened next. What followed was nothing like what they expected, not even close. In fact, it was the opposite. And when the truth slowly became clear, some of the women began to cry. Not from pain, not from humiliation, but from a feeling they believed the war had erased forever. Relief. So what did that order actually mean? What were the Americans really doing? And why did it overturn everything these women thought they knew? Stay with me until the end, because this true World War II story defies expectation. They were never meant to be there. Not in uniform, not near the front lines, not trapped in the collapse of a dying regime. Yet by 1945, thousands of German women had been drawn into the machinery of total war. Despite years of promises that they would remain protected, Hannelore Voigt was 22 when she was assigned to a Wehrmacht communications unit. She trained as a radio operator in a neat schoolhouse in Bavaria. She wore a gray auxiliary uniform. She transmitted coded messages, logged coordinates, and followed orders. She never carried a weapon. She was not a combat soldier, but she moved with soldiers. And when they retreated, she retreated with them. Renate Kessler worked as a clerk at a supply depot near the Rhine. Her duties were simple: inventory lists, paperwork, official stamps. She worked in a basement office under a single hanging bulb. It was dull, routine, and safe until February 1945, when the American advance shattered the front. The depot was abandoned within hours. Renate grabbed her coat and joined a convoy heading west. There was no destination, only movement. Anneliese Falk was 19, a nurse's aide. She volunteered, believing she would tend to wounded men in orderly hospitals far from danger. Instead, she found herself in mobile field stations that relocated every few days. Men screamed on makeshift tables, morphine ran out, bandages ran out, and when artillery crept closer, they loaded trucks and fled. Waltraud Lindemann drove one of those trucks. She was 28, older than most, physically strong, and quiet. She drove through mud, smoke, and roads clogged with refugees. She kept her eyes forward and her hands steady on the wheel. She had learned not to look at faces. By the final year of the war, more than 500,000 German women served in auxiliary roles across the Wehrmacht, Luftwaffe, and SS. They worked as typists, radio operators, drivers, cooks, nurses, and clerks. Most were between 18 and 25. Most had never experienced combat. Most believed they would be kept away from danger. They were wrong. When the Third Reich began to collapse in the spring of 1945, military order disintegrated. Entire units withdrew without coordination. Supply lines vanished. Officers disappeared. And the women clerks, drivers, radio operators were carried along like debris in a flood. Alfreda Roth had been stationed at a communications hub in the Ruhr Valley. When American forces encircled the area, the officers fled first. The women were told transport would come. It never did. They walked 30 kilometers in 2 days with no food and no map. Alfreda's boots shredded her heels. She tore strips from her undershirt to wrap her feet. The cloth turned red. She kept walking. Trudworth was not even military. She worked as a civilian translator. When headquarters evacuated, she begged to go with them. Her husband was a prisoner somewhere in France. Survival was her only goal. She climbed into the back of a truck. No one checked her documents. No one cared. Capture happened in fragments. Some women were stopped at roadblocks. Others surrendered in groups. Some were found hiding in barns or abandoned schools. Hannelore Voigt's unit was halted by American soldiers on a rural road. The troops were young and exhausted. Rifles were raised. Commands were shouted in English. Hannelore lifted her hands, as did the other women in the truck. One American soldier hesitated and called his sergeant. "What do we do with them?" The answer was brief: same as the men. They were processed and sent to a prisoner enclosure, a cage. When Hannelore heard the word, her stomach sank. None of them had been prepared for captivity. They had been trained to type, drive, and obey. No one had taught them how to be prisoners. By early May 1945, Allied forces were processing tens of thousands of German prisoners each day. Makeshift camps overflowed. Barbed wire surrounded muddy fields. Tents replaced buildings. Women were separated from men and placed in crowded compounds. There were no beds, no heating, only damp ground and cold air and fear. Not fear of what was happening, but fear of what might happen next. Fear does not require evidence. It grows in silence. And silence filled the camps. The women were given no timelines, no explanations, no information. In that void, propaganda returned with full force. For years, Nazi broadcasts had prepared them for this moment, not with truth, but with terror. Posters warned to protect your women. Radio voices described unspeakable crimes by enemy soldiers. The message was relentless. Surrender meant suffering. The women believed it. Inside the camp, rumors multiplied. Whispers spread at night. Stories changed with every telling. No one knew what was real, but everyone listened. And then, before dawn one morning, guards moved through the camp shouting orders. Women were told to line up outside immediately. No explanation, just obedience. The yard was bare dirt and mud beneath a gray sky. The women stood shoulder to shoulder, coats buttoned wrong, hands shaking. American officers entered quietly. Captain Thomas Mercer walked the line with a clipboard. A medic followed. A nurse carried a canvas bag. They did not shout. They did not threaten. Mercer stopped in front of Waltraud Lindemann and spoke. "Open your coat." The words cut through the silence. Even those who didn't understand English understood the gesture. Hands froze. Knees weakened. This was the moment they had been warned about. Waltraud's fingers trembled as she unbuttoned her coat. Beneath it, her shirt hung loose from weight loss. The medic stepped forward, scanning her collarbones, her hands, her breathing. He made a note and signaled to the nurse. A blanket was placed around her shoulders. Confusion spread. One by one, the command was repeated. Some women were pulled aside, not for punishment, but for treatment: frostbite, infection, severe malnutrition, pneumonia. What the women believed was humiliation was in reality triage. The inspection lasted less than an hour. 17 women were taken to a medical tent. The rest were dismissed. No violence followed. No cruelty, only care. That night, the camp felt different. Still cold, still crowded, but altered. Whispers spread, not of terror but of disbelief. Blankets, soup, bandages. Slowly, certainty cracked. Years later, many of the women would reflect on that moment. They were not terrified of what happened. They were terrified of what they had been taught to expect. The war ended. The camps closed. Lives resumed, but the memory remained. 3 words, a lifetime of fear, and then nothing. No brutality, no humiliation. Just a medic's glance and a nurse's blanket.